The playoffs are here for the Devils, and unfortunately, it wasn't a sight to behold. They dropped game one to the Hurricanes by a score of 4-1. What went wrong, and what do they need to improve in order to see a better outcome in game two? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, College Hockey Club play announcer, Devils Wire Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. First and foremost, happy Easter to all those who celebrate. I hope the Easter Bunny left a lot of good treats in your baskets. Unfortunately for the Devils, their basket was empty because they dropped game one of round one to the Carolina Hurricanes by a score of 4-1. Oh yeah, in addition to it being Easter, welcome officially to the start of the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs. Not really a good welcoming for the Devils because they didn't have much momentum. They came out with no energy. They got off to another slow start that they could not recover. Jacob Markstrom was pretty good in between the pipes. Unfortunately, his valiant efforts went to waste. There's so much to dissect. In the first segment, I will share my main takeaways from the game. Then in the second segment, we will hear from head coach Sheldon Keefe as he provides his perspective as to what went wrong for the Devils. And then in the third and final segment, like I do with every post-game episode or recap, I will compare the stats and give the Devils a letter grade. That segment still stays the same, despite it being the postseason. All right. Before I give my analysis of the game, let me just speak from the heart momentarily. The Devils really need to dig deep because they are heavy underdogs in this matchup. According to Money Puck, they're not giving the Devils much grace. The odds of the Carolina Hurricanes advancing to the second round, almost 70%. The Devils' odds of advancing to the second round, around 30%. People are anticipating for this series to be a sweep. The Devils are shorthanded. They're missing some key assets. Their star player in Jack Hughes, a solid defenseman in Jonas Siegenthaler. But I know this team is capable of so much better. A couple seasons ago, we were talking about how their goaltending was their Achilles heel. It's a little different this time around because goaltending is one of their strengths. I just said, Jacob Markstrom had a pretty good showing in between the pipes. If you don't believe me, here are some numbers. Expected goals against, 4.12. He allowed 3 goals. Goals saved above expected rating was 1.12. Honestly, that should be a little bit higher. It's one of the reasons why I'm not really the biggest fan of advanced analytics. But that's what the numbers say. Here's also another big number. He made 41 saves. The score could always be worse. The Devils could have been like the Senators and allowed 6 goals. The Devils really need to pull their act together. Otherwise, they will be in danger of being swept. I haven't lost hope with the Devils. I still have faith in Sheldon Keefe. But performances like this, unacceptable. But I will give you guys some hope. Remember a couple seasons ago, the Devils lost back-to-back games to the Rangers 5-1 to open up the playoffs. And then they ended up winning in 7. What happened? Some players really stepped up. You had players like Andre Palat, Eric Haula, an unlikely hero like Akira Schmid really elevate their games when the Devils needed it most. The same can be said This year, I know the Devils, once again, are missing somebody like Jack Hughes, but heroes are born in the playoffs. That's the old saying. So I'm looking for someone to really take their game to the next level. I put this out on social media. Here's some depth players to look out for. Entering this game, Eric Halla, he had 10 points and a plus-minus rating of +5 since March 7th. That's the trade deadline for reference. Dawson Mercer, same thing, 10 points since March 7th. Andre Palat has 101 points in 151 career playoff games. Playoff P is a real thing. He's not made up. We saw it a couple seasons ago against the Rangers. That's what I'm looking for from the Devils. And they cannot get off to bad starts because the reality of it is the Devils struggle when they trail late in a game. We'll talk more about that in the second segment. Now, Mark Messier was saying that the Devils miss Jack Hughes and Jack brings some sort of physical aspect to the game, which he's completely wrong about. I don't know what he was talking about. The Devils have been missing Jack Hughes for quite some time. He got injured in early March. Jack is important, don't get me wrong, but the Devils are still a pretty decent team. Yes, they're not the same team that they were before the Christmas break, and let's face it, they're not going to be that team, especially with Jack Hughes out. But you still have some good players in Nico Hischier, one of the best two-way players in the league. He's going to be a finalist for the Selke. Jesper Bratt is still a point-per-game player. Timo Meier is a good power forward. The Devils still have a lot of decent contributors, and I know they're so much better than what they showcased in game one. I'm not expecting for them to become champions, but I do expect a better performance. They need to put together a better effort for their sake, their fans' sake, because I don't want to see the Devils get swept. That's just me. So going back to what Mark Messier said, it's not a physicality problem. The Devils have just been an inconsistent team since the Christmas break, and they've never figured it out. Like, they had to limp across the finish line. It's so strange that they never dropped out of the top 3 in the Metropolitan Division. It's just a strange dynamic. Like, if you look at the Devils before the Christmas break and after the Christmas break, it's like two completely different teams. I need the Devils to just, once again, dig deep. That's all I'm going to say. We were talking about this in the Pucks and Pitchforks group chat. Since offense can sometimes be tough to come by for the Devils, when looking at their first line, they had Stefan Nason, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. Do you consider breaking up Hischier and Bratt just to spread out the scoring just a little bit more? That's my question for you. I think it's something you have to consider because, let's face it, the bottom 6, they're not going to produce all that much. Paul Cotter, Cody Glass, Daniel Sprong, Andre Palat, Justin Dowling, Nathan Bastian. How is Dowling still on this roster? That's incredible. But anyway, I'm digressing a little bit. Timo Meier, I still have faith in him. Dawson Mercer, Eric Halla, they've stepped up their games to close out the regular season. But if scoring is going to be tough for the Devils, they need to find different ways to try to get their offense going. Okay, here are some injury updates. Brendan Dillon in the second period was wrestled down to the ground by William Carrier. There was nothing egregious by it, just a hard-nosed hockey play. Unfortunately, Brendan Dillon got injured. He was able to skate away on his own willpower, but the training staff was right behind him. He was on the ground for a lengthy period of time, and they were talking about it on the ESPN telecast, which is Brendan Dillon is a tough customer. So if he's in pain and he's showcasing it, you know it's serious. Sheldon Keefe said post-game that Brendan Dillon was trying to get back into the game and that they actually had to restrain him from going back out there. The doctors kept him out for precautionary reasons. So if I had to make an educated guess, I think Brendan Dillon will be good to go come Tuesday. Luke Hughes and Cody Glass in the third period. When it rains, it pours. let's talk about Luke Hughes first. He tripped over Jesperi Kokadiemi, and he went flying into the net. And he was down on the ground, and he was grabbing his upper body. He went straight for the tunnel. Everybody was concerned because remember, Luke Hughes missed time at the beginning of the season due to a shoulder injury, similar to his brother. So people were worried that maybe he re-aggravated something. And the Devils were already rocking with 5 defensemen because, like I said, Brendan Dillon didn't return to the game. So were the Devils just going to have to rock with 4 defensemen? Their bench was getting smaller, smaller, and smaller. Luckily, Luke Hughes re-entered the game, and it was a good moment because he's going to have to eat up a good chunk of those minutes. He's been doing it to close out the season. Then for Cody Glass, friendly fire from his teammate Jacob Markstrom. This is the one gripe I have against Jacob Markstrom in this particular game because he inadvertently hurt his own teammate and it might cost him in the end. What happened? Well, Andrei Svechnikov was right in front of Markstrom, and Markstrom was just trying to slash him away. He sort of did like a chop motion, and Cody Glass absorbed all of it, immediately went down and was favoring his ankle. And you could just see the look in Jacob Markstrom's eyes saying, like, what did I just do? So once again, this game went from bad to worse to even worse. I can't say worser. That's not even a word. If you were to look up the term Murphy's Law in the dictionary, I think this game would be shown because the Devils just had no answer. They had no momentum, and it seemed like hope was lost. At least they were able to score one in the second. That's all I could say, thanks to Nico Hischier. But my main takeaways, got off to a slow start. They allowed way too many shots from the Hurricanes, and they made their goalie work a little too much. Lack of ozone time. PK Subban talked about it during the telecast. And at least Jacob Markstrom had a good outing. The Devils are going to have to rely on that moving forward. All right, we're going to hear from Sheldon Keefe momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Game Time because I'm sure you guys would like to see the game up close and personal. The Stanley Cup Playoffs are here. And if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer. And with last-minute deals, you could save up to 60%. Last-minute deals, like I said, save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They're all in pricing, shows the total cost upfront, no surprise fees at checkouts. The app even shows you great views from your seat, so you know exactly what you're getting before you buy. And with Game Time ticket coverage, I know I'm protected, whether it's cancellation protection, job loss assurance, or their 24-hour return guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's listen into what Sheldon Keefe had to say. Take a listen.
How do you think your guys responded in that first?
I actually like lots about our first period, except for our special teams. Power play, I thought really gave them life. I mean, they scored on the first shot of the game, so that's one thing. But the power play gave their team life. Both our power play and then when they got their power play, I thought it really kind of gave them life. I thought at 5-on-5 didn't have a lot of issues with our game, other than what we expected with the energy and pace. I thought second period we were just overwhelmed, and that was not good enough. Third period was good. The damage is done by then.
What do you sort of have to see from your team to maybe get a little more shots on Freddie? You talked this morning about how that's the hardest part of facing this team.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like we're not going to get a lot. It's just that's just the reality of it. We haven't had a lot for quite some time, and you come in and play a team like Carolina. They're going to make it real hard on you. With that said, we had more than enough, to score more than we did. There's some opportunities there. If we did gain a little bit more and spend less time on our half of the ice, we're going to get a few more of those. So. It's the better we play on our half of the ice is going to reduce their time with the puck and increase ours, and that should take care of getting us a little bit more offense. But it's going to come down to us maximizing the chances that we do get and being better on special teams than we were today.
Since the Devils ended up losing this game, I guess now's the time to add salt to the wound because I'm going to assume that everyone's not really in the best of moods. Logan Stankoven, who scored 2 unanswered goals in the second period, one of them being a power play goal. Does that name ring a bell? Well, it should because the Devils passed up on him back in the 2021 draft. Who did they draft late in the first round? Chase Stillman. Where is Chase Stillman now? No longer with the Devils. And where is Logan Stankoven? Well, he's doing pretty well for himself with the Hurricanes. He was a part of the Mikko Rantanen trade, and I saw the whole discussion on social media. I just wanted to bring that up once again. But anyway, back on a more serious note. I talked about it in the first segment when I brought up Mark Messier's analysis of the game and how the Devils were playing and how Jack Hughes brings some sort of physicality to the table. And I just rolled my eyes. I'm just like, okay, clearly you haven't been paying attention. Alex Chavancy, my colleague and also a writer for the Hockey Writers, brought this up on social media and said that the Devils' average height and weight is 6'2", 201 pounds. The Canes' average height and weight, 6'1", 199 pounds. So once again, physicality, I don't think is the problem. I think it's just the structure in which the Devils are playing. The Devils desperately need to get off to better starts. The playoffs are a completely different animal. They can't keep doing what they did in the regular season where they don't play good in the first period. Maybe the second period they redeem themselves, and then third period is like a coin flip. They can't continue to do that. Look, here's some stats for you. The Devils in the regular season, when leading after the second period, they knew how to close out games, 35-1-2. When tied after the second period, it was a toss-up, 6-8-3. When trailing after the second period, 1-24-2. So yeah, Devils not all that efficient when it comes to coming from behind. And once the Devils were down in the second intermission, 3-1, I said, look, it's great that Nico Hischier was able to score to cut the lead to 2, but I knew that the Devils weren't going to win the game. So the Devils need to find ways to get off to better starts. And I disagree with what Sheldon Keefe said, saying that he felt as though the first period was good. At least from my perspective. Look, I'm not trying to act like I know more than Sheldon Keefe, but here's the reality of it. The Devils' shots on goal differential compared to the Hurricanes, 17-5. And Jim Behringer brought this up on social media. The Devils were turning the puck over in neutral ice. They weren't handling the puck all that well. They couldn't sustain much time in their offensive end. Basically, Frederik Andersen had little to no pressure on him. Devils improved in the third period, but once again, you can't trail for all of the game and expect to turn it around quickly. And how did the Hurricanes score their first goal of the game? Well, the Devils lost the faceoff, and Jalen Chatfield found the back of the net. Now, I think that could have been called goalie interference. In fact, I was just like, I think the Devils should challenge that. I don't know, but they elected not to because I guess Jacob Markstrom was too far out from the net to count as goalie interference. I don't really know, but Chatfield scored the first goal of the game for the Hurricanes and was directly off a faceoff win. Winning faceoffs, handling the puck, playing well in neutral ice, sustaining offensive zone pressure, heavily outshooting their opponent. The Devils did none of that in the first period. And they got to alleviate the pressure from Jacob Markstrom. I'm glad that he had a good game, but you can't put that kind of pressure on his shoulders. You got to play better in front of him. And just like PK Subban was saying in between the intermissions, handle the puck better. I'm glad that PK Subban supports the Devils because he has them going to the Eastern Conference Finals. I don't think the Devils will make it that far, but I'm glad that he believes in the Devils and he always goes to bat for them. Just wanted to show some love to PK Subban. But yeah, this game, not really much to take from it. Aside from the Nico Hischier goal and Jacob Markstrom's decent outing, I don't really have too many more positive things to say about the Devils. All right, we're going to compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade momentarily. But before we continue, let me tell you guys about Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Shell 25 as you easily stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. I'm actually a casual gamer, so I use this device a lot. Highly recommend it. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, let's compare the stats, give the Devils a letter grade, and get out of here. Hopefully the Devils can redeem themselves come game 2. Like I said in the first segment, they dropped the first 2 games against the Rangers in 2023. They ended up winning in 7. There's a lot of parity in hockey. Anything can happen. Shots on goal differential, 45-24 in favor of the Hurricanes. Power plays. Hurricanes were 1 for 3. Devils were 0 for 2. The Hurricanes got their power play goal thanks to Stankoven. Hits, 52-41 in favor of the Devils. Physicality, not an issue for the Devils. Just getting their offense going and handling the puck a little bit better. That's what needs to improve. Giveaways, 14-12 in favor of the Hurricanes. Takeaways, 2-0 in favor of the Devils. Block shots, 16-13 in favor of the Hurricanes. Time spent in the penalty box, 8-6 in favor of the Devils. Okay, if I had to give the Devils a letter grade, this is a little difficult because Jacob Markstrom, he performed well. The Devils are not a good first period team. They showed some life in the third period, but it was too little too late. The damage had already been done. If I had to give the Devils a letter grade, I will give them a solid D because, like I said, they are capable of so much better. I know they're missing Jack Hughes, but that shouldn't be your only excuse. You need to dig deep and perform much better. Show why you're a playoff team. The Devils didn't drop out of the top 3 in the Metro all season long. In fact, the biggest drop that they had was going from 2nd to 3rd, and that was sometime in late January. So they pretty much stayed intact with what they had. Yeah, I'll give the Devils a D. I'll give them somewhat of a pass just because it's the first game of the playoffs, and sometimes the playoffs, you need to feel it out a little bit. And if the Devils end up losing the second game to the Hurricanes, they better win 2 straight at the Rock. Otherwise, this series is going to be put to bed early. Let me know your thoughts. Do you have any expectations whatsoever for the Devils moving forward in the playoffs? If so, what do they need to do to improve? I already shared my thoughts. I'm curious to hear yours. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on podcast streaming service. Hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Thanks for listening. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys next episode. Thanks for listening once again.